Hey guys, it was a pretty interesting spot that my good friend Jake encountered, and I thought that we could all use some insight from a $11 uh, free K ignition player who yells at losing flips in level 3. So I'm gonna give some insight on this hand. Gonna use Pio, mix of GTO, mix of exploitation, and let's review it. So we're playing 250-500. We start the hand with about 25 bigs. Min open standard, loose button calls. We'll see this later. And blinds fold. So right off the bat, 5 free deuce, two tone. I think this is a board where we're gonna be checking a lot, just because those kind of flat, the like in position of so many suited hands. Obviously, we have a nut advantage, but they have hypothetically a stronger range. We know that this button's pretty loose, so I don't think that's necessarily the case. But again, they have a lot of random 4x suited hands. Deuces, threes, fives. We have them too, but I think they're kind of condensed. Maybe hands like ace, king, not there. King, queen suited, not there. Um, we likely, on average, have stronger hands because of how loose they are. We have a EV advantage, but in position, betting here a lot gets us in trouble, I think. They can float us pretty wide. We have to give up a lot of turns. We get raised a lot. So we're not going to be looking to bet it a lot. I think we're going to be, yeah, relatively poor. Like, we're not going to be betting hands like king, queen offsuit for protection because when we get raised, we're in a world of hurt. So king's right here, check. We'll review that later. Um, I think it's good. It doesn't benefit from protection. They're going to be betting a lot here, and we get to, it's a hand that plays good at the trap. And it goes check check. Queen X. When they check here, I don't expect them to have a ton of strong hands, and we want to start putting money in the pot with kings. So I think sizing up here is definitely the play, definitely the right play here. And they call, and it's a good geometric size for a shove. But this ace of clubs river comes. Um, this is going to be a lot of the brunt of our review. It's kind of the worst river in the deck. The question is, do we bet for value? Do we check call, potentially check fold? How big do we bet? In this hand, Jake chooses to shove. I don't think it's the right play for reasons that I'll get into, reasons Pi will get into, and we get looked up with a hand that chooses, really shows their loose sizing. But with this in mind, actually, I think it's really good to look at the spot in Pio, see what they should be doing with their very loose range, compare that to what they're actually doing, and then kind of figure out what we want to do for our kings here. So I've already solved it right here. We have, I rounded things down, but in terms of the bet sizings, I put for us out of position a block, like a 1/3, a size up, and then a flop raise for them. I kind of did a mix of those two sizings as well. Um, Out of position, I forgot to add a raise size, but I don't think that should be affecting things because I imagine out of position when it goes check check, we'll be betting a lot. Kind of sucks that we don't have any raises, but for the sake of it, I don't think it'll make that big of a difference. River raise obviously essential, and for them, I didn't give them a big size. Just maybe I should have. I kind of gave them small and a middling size. I don't think on check check they're gonna want to be sizing up a lot, but I could be wrong. Probably should be giving them a big size actually, but it takes a long time, and I think we'll still be able to get our desired outcome that we want on the river. And then inside, in position as a small size and a big size. So do we. We also have donks, and then we obviously have our shove. And we have donks as a out of position on both turn and river. So back to this. First off, with our specific hand, If I want to look at actually EVs, uh, oops. So yeah, I'll just do it in terms of percentages. So obviously our overpairs are pretty good. Our middling junky hands aren't that good, but our obviously heart draws, backdoor hearts marginally better, and obviously flush draws with the club's pretty good. Kind of our two overcard hands are doing okay, not great. Ace X's are doing pretty well. Our wheels are doing very well, but these middling ace X's kind of middling equity. So we actually hit it pretty well, but being out of position, kind of tricky. But again, checking, betting half the time, mixing sizes kind of makes sense. In position, as you can see, the thing is with their super loose range, is they have this middling part of their range that's just going to be pretty worthless, which is a lot of times why we're going to want to have some small sizes, I believe, because we can just eliminate this range. But then there's a lot of hands that are going to want to put in money, a lot of ace X's that do pretty well, and a lot of these, kind of wheel straight draw hands. So we're going to also want to be sizing up with some hands to target those. So back to out of position and our strategy plus EV. As you can see, we're really mixing with sides. And as I said, hands like Queen Jack, uh, especially with like backdoor hearts, they like the small sizing because they can get that free equity. And then also there's some good turns they can barrel on. 10-7 suited. With the backdoor hearts, they like that small size. Naturally, kind of flush draws. King 7 with backdoor hearts. But even with no equity combos, you can see they use, I click, you can see that like King 7 of spades, King 7 of diamonds, they'll use a small bet occasionally just because we can eliminate those. When it comes to big sizings, it's going to want to be hands that get value and are kind of vulnerable. And so like ace 5 is always easy to big sizing, right? Because we want our 5 to start getting value against worth 5s, 4s, and we benefit from protection. 8-8, 9-9, perfect example of these hands. 7s kind of start mixing because we get, things like backdoor equity. Um, 6s are interesting. With a club, we always want to bet big. I think, we have the straight draws of the nuts that has massive implied odds, and also we benefit from protection. So, like, it's a hand that does not mind bet big calling it off. 3-3 and 2-2 are going to be mixing. Always small size, though. Obviously, blocking a lot of value, but not completely. But then we're at 5-5, really blocks a lot of value. Hands that we're going to be bluffing for the big size are going to be hands like ace 8, right, with no club. Um, well, even with club, actually, and with the club, it's just a hand that kind of blocks some continues like 8-8, but also doesn't have that great of equity. Um, I think it's, blocking hands like 7-8 that might be like raises or floats. 6, pretty nice. And we want some bluffs for our big size. Queen 10 with the queen of clubs, or with a club in general, is going to be good, right? We'll get some barrel hands, and it interacts with hands like 10s, and it interacts with our own queens. And also, we do get pretty good backup equity with queen X, but our queen isn't, unlike a hand like king jack offsuit, where our king has so much more showdown, our queen doesn't have as much. Um, so it's good to start throwing these into bluffs, but with nothing that blocks any of their clubs or has backup club equity, we're pretty much just using it as a check. Again, king X, pretty bad, these two overcard hands that don't feel comfortable bet folding, they're going to check a lot. And, we like to do betting with hands like king of spades, king of hearts, queen of clubs. We have the backup club equity, but in addition, we have the heart, which will block their continues, which are often going to be hard hands, as we'll see soon. and it's also good for us to potentially turn this into a bluff when it runs out hard heart on our own hand. With King King though, our specific hand, um, it likes mixing. It's a hand that doesn't um, it doesn't really need um, protection, but we do want to get some money in. As you can see, like checking and betting are really close in EV. But we're going to want to use a small size. And it's interesting with a club here. We want to check or we want to bet because we kind of block their bets, which are going to be a lot of club hands. So we want to start putting the money ourselves because it's going to condense their like we're going to miss out on being able to blow the pot. It goes check check more often when we block clubs. So it's good for us to have that. So in our game tree, we are checking, which is good with our hand, good with our range. And our opponent, interesting enough, they're going to be betting. They're like good. Ace X is a lot for a small value. They're going to mix with some, especially a hand like this. Um, you have that additional equity of the high card. You get value from worse ace X's, so it's worth a value bet. Ace Jack though mixing, as we see these middling aces, they're going to be mixing sixes interesting because we have the flush draw. But seven, when we don't have the club, we kind of like taking our free equity a lot. Uh, but with the ace of heart, we actually want to start betting because we get some future really strong barrels, I believe. Um, for some no equity hands, we're going to be using small sizing, actually more of our garbage, because we just fold a lot. Like so, a lot of our garbage hands are actually when they're going to be betting small, and we're never really using a big combo here, a big sizing. Our 4Xs mixing, obviously our combo draws though, they just want to get in money, and we're going to be more inclined to be betting with our backdoor flush draws. Again, more money. Interestingly enough, 8-4 of clubs, or 8-4 in general, is always a check. Um, it's our weak fours that don't have a pair. They really don't want to get check raised. We want to have some fours, so it's a good hand for a delayed c bet, and it's a great hand to start putting in our checking range because we don't have much backup equity, and so I'd rather have that kind of weak four to start putting in. So him checking with ace four suited as played actually equilibrium. Um, but betting small is, as you see, EV wise, pretty fucking close. It's nearly identical. But I like having some of these hands with just no backup equity. So it goes check check. And our turn card comes the Queen of Diamonds. So, without a position with our good hands, besides ace ace, which we still want to play a trap because we block so many calling hands and we really don't need protection. And obviously, it's interesting. Queen, queen. Um, we want to start checking like at the slow play, and these middling cards. It's betting and checking small is kind of similar, but with the queen on the overpair, it's hard for us to get a lot of value. And so, like, I think they're going to be inclined, especially if we go back to their decision in position, they're going to be betting pretty much all their pocket pairs. So when they check, like, so we're not getting value from worse pocket pairs when it goes check check. So we still kind of like playing these as like pot control traps, and a lot of times their checking range is going to be really condensed with hands like Queen X. So we're just not comfortable enough. Like we'd be getting value if they bet on the flop with these type of hands. So we're just not getting enough value betting our middling pairs. Now kings, it's a interesting in between hand where we're trying to play for stacks. My sizing here is a little bit small compared to what Jake used. Jake's sizing is actually better. But as you can see, when we have king king, we just like, even though our immediate EV is probably higher when well, no, just betting large is just always the best. We want to play for stacks. We don't block. I mean, yeah, we're getting worse hands to call us, and it's not like ace ace, which is the super trap hand, and we do benefit from some protection. It's just definitely a good bet here. So when we size up, a hand like 8-4, always just a pure fold. Raising, they really, because interestingly enough, I think a lot of their made hands would want to, like, a lot of their flush draws would want to start raising or betting um, for a small value. And so um, they actually don't have a lot when this flop comes. Um, I think they have some, like 10-9 suited, that likes to check back, but they're not going to be like bluffing with them. They have the power position. They don't need to start bluffing. It's just, it, as you see, just kind of balances itself out. So they're not really going to be playing a raising strategy in position, which makes sense. You have position, why soil it? You don't need that much protection, and you're just putting yourself in a hard spot against when they're betting big. Now, if I were to bet small, we start developing raises with hands that need more value. So we have, um, you know, Queen X, our slow played aces, and then you can see some ace X hands start going into bluffs, like especially ones that kind of block flush draws. So like the ace of clubs and ones that can bet on the river with the clubs. Some other raises are just going to be like sixes. Um, 10-9, see, this one actually likes to raise the flush draw, doesn't have any equity, and kind of disguised. So I think that's pretty smart. Um, King 4 is it's kind of out of here by now because it's betting 100%. But let me see what else. Yeah, a hand like King Queen Jack kind of, it doesn't want to raise because it's just like suited. Um, it's just so strong enough. With some frequency, it wants to raise. That one protect. Yeah, so kind of makes sense. This ace X will be mixing with the club combo, but it's such a good combo draw that like we're okay to get it in. And I think we can fold out some of our worst parts. So I'm curious. So if we choose the raise sizing, I'm gonna start to fold hands like ace 10 that were behind. I'm gonna fold hands that have some equity, like Jack 10, King 9, King 7, Ace 10. Uh, let me see if we ever fold any pairs. 7-7 starts to fold sometimes, which is a huge win. Um, so raising does get some good stuff done and it keeps us honest. Ace Jack, so that's why you like raising with hand like Ace 8 suited with clubs kind of makes sense. But as played, um, we're gonna go and OOP is gonna be using the big sizing, and they're calling. Now to the least fun river in the deck, Ace of Clubs. So, in this hand, I mean I'd say in position, uh, looks like, I mean, they're doing pretty well for a lot of hands, and out of position just bricks on so many hands, right? We have so many non-value hands. We're super polarized here. King King is one of the few hands, as long as our Queen X's, that kind of have this middling. And obviously a hand like this gets here on the river as a bluff or the nuts, so it's gonna be high but pretty hot or cold. This is really our only middling equity type hand when we reach a river, when we play like this. Obviously sets are really good, but King King is an interesting exception, right? Because it was one of our few turn pair bets. Um, Pretty much Queen X and King King were our few, turn, yeah, turn pair bets. And so by the time we get the river on this ace of clubs, which changes a lot of things, it's middling equity. So as you see, we have 48% equity in position as 58. This is a really bad card for us. Whereas out of position, if we go back to the turn, out of position had 55 and 45 in position. So our equity really hit the shitter. Um, so with this hand, obviously, as a middling equity hand, we're just always using it as a bluff catcher. We're behind. We don't want to put more value in the more money in the pot with a middling hand. Uh, really, our queens always use as a bluff catcher. Ace queen is a two pair. It's middling, right? Without um, without a club, uh, I think, yeah, it kind of makes sense. They're all pretty much mixing at the same rate. But king's always just kind of be checking. You know, for pretty much our bets work in that we're putting in money with, um, yeah, we're putting in money with hands like, you know, our clubs, and we're gonna use some of our, you know, random backdoor, well, you know, hands that interact with the queen like king X to be using as small bluffs because we're kind of repping, you know, we're blocking queens, and that's kind of like one of the hands that we'll call it to small sizing. Um, king 7, you know, mixing with a lot of junky hands. We look at 8-6, and as you can see here, this is a hand that's always going to like betting for a big size because that 6 interaction with blocking the straights is really important. Um, you know, 7-6 is again another good one to be starting to put into bluffs because of that reason and betting for our flushes. Ace free is uh, between close to check and bet. With our two pair, it's like obviously we want to get value, not worth a big amount. But in this situation, king is just even against this guy who's, despite him being a donk, has actually played his hand perfectly. Um, we just want to be checking in position with his wide range, just smacks it. So uh, our question is, what do we do with if we check and he bets? So he's going to be betting value. He's not going to be betting queens really, except with like the flushes, but he's just going to be using queens as a check back. Even ace x, he's just going to be using as a check back. This is such a polarizing turn that he's just going to be using the check back. And interestingly enough, like we have some mixing where ace x with the ace of clubs is like, I mean, with the jack of clubs, blocking flushes is being used as a bluff. And, you know, that's interesting. Like this I believe is a bluff. It's like a merge, I guess. Our 5x's, by the time they hit the river, they don't have showdown. They're some of our worst hands, and they block hands like 5-4 that are going to be oftentimes checking the turn. So they block our flushes. I mean, they block our straights, and we just have a range advantage with this, and we're just going to be wanting to bet. Uh, Naturally, hands like queens are going to be checking. Uh, Occasionally betting small for value, but mostly checking unless you have the flush. And so against this bet, it's going to be mostly big, right? You don't want to it's such a polarized board. You don't want to be reopening it. Um, and so we're going to be choosing the big size. And against a big size, kings is mixing. And as you guys know by now, um, that our clubs are going to be, we need the blockers. We need the king of clubs. And it's close, but cool. And for this kind of exploitative part of the video, we're going to see, just do a little theoretical and say that if our opponent is an insane station and they call with any queen X and maybe some fives, right? Like how much do we need to expand their range for our kings to be worth a value bet. And so we're gonna do that using the Range Explorer. So as I kind of discussed earlier, we're pretty hot and cold. Having this is technically an under pair, but second pair under pair. It's a decent chunk of our range, but it's not that great. We are, while we have 20%, we're mostly polarized between like 33% nothing, and then we have like about 33% two pair plus. So this is our little middling. Uh, so our bettings, we can easily check this and have this pretty polar strategy. Whereas if we click on imposition, they're gonna have a lot of ace x and like a lot of queen x's, and then naturally they're gonna have a lot of flushes and straights too. It is really rare for them to hit this river with completely nothing. But the thing that I'm gonna do right here is just it's simple calcing, right? Second pair, top pair. Second pair is gonna be queen x, top pair is gonna be ace x. Now obviously top pair beats us, right? So we want second pair to call. Um, which is gonna be, if you look right here, queen x hands, all queen x hands. Um, and then third pair is just gonna be some of those five x's. And then low pair is just gonna be some of these like combo draw, king free, type hands that will call sometimes. So this is just honestly calculator, right? So if they call with ace x plus, that's gonna, or yeah, ace x plus, we're gonna be betting that's gonna be 26 combos plus 8 combos of our two pair hands plus 15 combos of straights, as you can see right here, and plus 16 combos. I'm rounding that down because I rounded some of the other ones up. So they have 65 con combos, right? So when we bet with King King, we're going to be called by better with 65 combos, which is a lot because if we are calking Queen X calling, it's 32 combos. And then if we're saying they're fucking heroing, 10 combos. If we're saying low pair is 8 combos, it's 50 combos, right? So when we bet, we are just losing money here. And so using a bet of any sizing with King King here is just it's just not profitable. Our opponent on average just has way more better hands that'll call than worse hands, and like King King betting here is effectively a bluff, which it's naturally I think too good to bluff with, right? Because we have to bet fold as we've seen. And that's a bad situation, and it can work as a good bluff catcher. So exploitatively, this shove is not good, honestly. And even our opponent with this insane range just doesn't have enough junk to call. So King King, even exploitatively, is just always going to be a check.